What is going on, YouTube fitness family? I got my boy, my business partner, my
HGLT, harder than last time.
Harder than last time, supplement brother. We wrote out the top 10 exercises for hypertrophy to build the most muscle possible. If you could only do 10 exercises, we racked our brains to get you the best list. I have my list, Greg has his. We're gonna go one by one, and then we're gonna try to come together and make a super list at the end for you. Without further ado, I made my list. I don't know how you thought through it. I went from bottom up just because legs the foundation of everything. Little surprise here, my first exercise I have here is leg press. It is tremendous to build muscle. There's no axial loading. You're not putting pressure on your back. You can get great range of motion. Tremendous work for your quads and glutes. I think it's an amazing exercise.
And so I have to agree. I think that the leg press is great. There's less injury risk. It's gonna really target your quads. It's also gonna get some of your glutes and hamstrings. And so there's no way you shouldn't have leg press in here if you can do it.
All right, that's number one. That's a great job. Number two, I have seated hamstring curls. The reason I have a hamstring isolation is most compounds, you're not gonna have a lot of, a ton of hamstring engagement. And a lot of times hamstring is a lagging body part for most people just because we don't utilize as much unless you have like a sprinting background or something like that, or just genetic predisposition. Greg, for example, has amazing hamstrings. I've found for isolation above RDLs, especially from a CNS tax, stimulus to fatigue ratio, in terms of actual isolation, it's way better for me than almost any other. When you have a huge stretch bias, great peak contraction, I think it's an amazing exercise to build your hamstrings.
And I was making my list, and that was the 10th exercise that I put on my top 10 list. So we have made the same list so far. I think that the seated leg curl in comparison to the lying down, I think you get better development because you're going to be in a stretch position from the start. And so you're going to really work the hamstrings at the start of the movement a lot more than laying down. So if you had to pick between laying down and seated, I would choose seated. I strongly recommend this exercise.
All right, I'm moving on to number three, and my last of my true lower body specific exercises is the deficit Bulgarian split squat. And you guys are gonna hate me for that.
Well, it's definitely not on my list.
Yeah, so he hates anything in a lunging capacity. I think the split squat, especially in a deficit when you get a huge stretch, you can do these on the Smith machine, you can do it with a dumbbell. I think Smith machine is great because you have a lot of stability. It's on a fixed plane. You can drive super hard into that front foot, get so much glute, so much quad, so much hamstring, adductors as well. It's probably for me one of the king exercises, just because instead of let's say a barbell back squat, the load is usually maybe half of what you could do, even less, and you get so much stimulus, especially if you elevate that front foot. Amazing range of motion. You open up your hip flexors. Everything about it I think is amazing. You just have to get through the fact that it kind of sucks and then it's tremendous at building muscle.
Yeah, that enjoyment factor for me is a big deal, and instead of that, I have actual squats, just real squats. I absolutely love them. Now, although I'm not really supposed to do them due to an operation of my hips from something I had at birth, but for most people, I think that the squat is an amazing exercise. It's fun to do. You can progressive overload really easy. You can go up in weight, you can get stronger, you can go halfway down the full range of motion. I mean, I think squat's great. So I'd prefer doing squats over that. If you like that more than the squat, then why not? But I got the squats.
All right, yeah, I can dig that. I mean, it was a hard choice for me between that and let's say either a Smith machine squat, a free bar squat, or a pendulum, but I went with the Bulgarians. I feel like the weight's lower and you get to work isolaterally, so you also have that benefit of having your legs be even. Moving on to upper body, I did first back. I think lat pull down in some capacity, whether it be narrow grip, a wide grip. I think pull downs are very, very efficacious, can build a really thick back, use a lot of tempo. At any level, you can do well with them. So unlike a pull up, where a lot of people can't really do them well, especially if you're, let's say, starting out, you can get really good range of motion, you can get really good peak contraction. I think it's just a really great way to start building your back.
I also have the lat pull down, so it's another similarity. So I also think it's better than doing the actual chin ups without a weight. You can alter the weight a lot more. There's more people that can do this exercise. It's basically easier, it's more time efficient. You can put the peg down, do drop sets. Just an overall easier exercise for a beginner to do than just say, hey, let's do pull-ups, because you need to be really strong to do a pull-up. Not many people can do them. When I started, I could only do 6, and I was in high school. That's all I could do, 6. I was a pretty strong kid, and I could only do 6. So I can imagine a lot of kids out there starting out in teenage years, they're not gonna be strong enough to do this, and so why not use the lat pull down?
The next one is one that you're definitely not going to have on here. It's one of my favorite exercises. It's a bench supported isolateral cable row from a low position. So you basically have a bench in front of you. You have stability here. You get a huge stretch. The cable's in a low position and you can drive back, get really good scapular retraction. I love working isolateral plane, meaning single hand for back for a multitude of reasons, but ergonomically speaking, if you're here, you have limitations. Now think about it, you take one out and you can come here and really dig in, change different hand positions, get huge stretch. It allows me personally, and a lot of people I've shown, some of the top bodybuilders, I just showed Simeon Panda, he loved it. I mean, most people I've shown this exercise are like, oh, this is like one of my favorites I've ever done. For me, I think it's a great staple. It's a lot safer than, let's say, a barbell row or like a super heavy seated row. It's just less risk, less CNS taxing, really, really good stimulus fatigue ratio.
For me, I'm not a fan of the one arm at a time, and although it's a great exercise, I love the T-bar row. So I put T-bar rows because I find that it's very easy to hurt your lower back doing like bent rows, like you're saying, or even seated rows. I find that hard on the lower back, for me at least. And so for other people, I've noticed a lot of back problems from, I don't know, they may have done deadlifts or squats and they have a sore lower back. This exercise, it makes it a lot easier. You have the chest supported pad on.
Oh, so chest supported.
Well, it's a T-bar row. Your pad's here.
Yeah, so chest supported like T-bar, yeah. Okay, so it's not just a straight up like T-bar.
I don't like rowing at all with my back is not supported. I need some padding. So seated row, I don't like it because it's hard on my lower back. Bent rows, I don't like it. Reverse grip or pronated grip, I don't like it. So the T-bar, maybe I'm saying it wrong. T-bar rows?
It's usually called like a chest supported row.
Yeah, so I just call it like the T-bar, but I guess not like, there's a pad on your chest.
It's usually like
T-bar row with a chest support.
Chest supported row is usually what they call it.
So that's the one I put on my list, although that exercise is great. I just wish you could do it at the same time. Obviously you can't, but I'm more of a time efficiency type of guy. If I do one arm and I'm tired and then the other arm.
We've had that kind of argument, but the thing is with like an isolateral pull, like you can do one arm and then you don't have to have a tremendous amount of rest until you do the other arm, and then you can maybe have a longer rest between the two, but it's really not increasing maybe the time as much as you would think, because you can kind of go from one arm right into the other. It's not super
if you're doing 30 to 40 seconds in this arm, 30 to 40, there's a minute to minute and 20. I'm more of I'm gonna get it over with at the same time. But
fair enough.
Yeah, it's all good.
I moved up to shoulders next, and I have cable Y raise. So here, crossover on the grip, you can either do them on a bench or standing, and we're raising here. Really good for medial and a little bit of rear delts, mostly medial delts, a lot of front delts we're gonna get in our flies, presses. I don't think it's really important to focus on it inertly. A lot of rear delts we get with our pulling movements. I think it's probably my number one and only shoulder isolation movement I have on my list.
I noticed his list a lot more skill-based exercises. I'm more like the basics. So on the shoulders, for me, I put the shoulder press machine. So you're seated, you don't have to worry about the dumbbells. You're not gonna ego lift, you can control it. For me, I even have shoulder pains if I do dumbbells, but on an actual machine, I don't have any pain. And so I think it's one of these exercises you could do from the long haul. The first day you walk into the gym, you can do it and go hard. Progressive overload, the pegs there, it's very easy to do. And as you get older, your shoulders maybe are not as good, you can still do this exercise in comparison to something like a dumbbell where you gotta kick up the 80s or the 100s and get it stabilized. It's a lot harder, and so I added shoulder press machine to the list.
I next have, obviously I have a lot of fly movements. I had to pick one because I didn't want to do too many flies. I picked the one that I did an analysis based on actual readings using an EMG device, and the best outcome for me was cable bench supported chest flies. So we're up on a cable, basically on a vertical bench. So you're sitting, the cables are coming from behind you, out and then in. What we have is nice converging forces because the cables are coming from out to in. Really good stretch bias. You can really stretch behind you. You can work ergonomically with what works well for you and how you feel it the most in the chest. Tremendous movement pattern. I think it's a 10 out of 10 for me.
And although that's a great exercise, I'm just a fan of the bench press. I know you're not a big fan of the bench, but being a guy that's a record in the bench press, and people love the bench press, and although there's a risk factor involved if you're ego lifting, I still love a bench press. I think if you're gonna have less exercise, you're probably better to have a bit of a closer grip than a wide grip. That way you can work the triceps at the same time. You're gonna get some chest development as well as your shoulders, triceps. And so for me, bench press press. Be hard pressed to put a guy's workout program, a man, maybe not a woman, and not have bench press on the list. A lot of people are gonna not be happy about that.
I would agree with you. I think it's like a staple. People enjoy it. It's easy, progressive overload. I think like the major limitations are obviously range of motion. Like the bar is gonna stop you before you can really hit full stretch. And then also just ergonomics in terms of like the bar is gonna tend to want to make your elbows drive out, which is gonna put a lot of pressure on the front delt, and obviously pec minors where people get the tears. So that's why it wasn't on my list. I know people love it. I think it has to be an enjoyment factor for you too. If like you love bench pressing, I wouldn't take it away just to replace it with an exercise. Maybe it's a little safer, because then if you're not enjoying going to the gym and doing the exercise you're doing, you're probably not going to do it long term. So it's going to lead me into very similar to Greg's thought process on the shoulders. I'm going to do machine chest presses, whether that be like kind of a plate loaded mid chest press that converges, or like a really good like seated press here where you can really drive out and squeeze as like a pin loaded one. A lot of reasons. Usually have good range of motion. A lot of times they'll have like the little foot pedal that'll kind of get you out of the hole, but then you can really get a big stretch, really good peak contraction. It's way more stable than let's say a bench press, so you can really get really good eccentric load. You'll get obviously really good peak contraction. So for me, I think that's the pressing movement I would have chosen.
Okay, now switching gears, I added as well the deadlift. I think it's just a great overall body exercise, and I don't care if it's sumo, conventional, or the trap bar. Choose any form of the deadlift, and it's gonna force you to work hard. One of the things that I find people are lacking in the gym is intensity. If you're going on a deadlift, even if you're not pushing hard, you're gonna push hard. It's so easy to know if you're getting stronger.
Push your discs hard.
I like the deadlift. Actually, I love the deadlift. For your glutes, for your adductors, everything. I think that if you're adding in the deadlift, you're gonna definitely get some more leg work. I find for most people, they don't train their legs hard enough. I find most people are most men, women, I'd say have trained legs harder than men on average here. They care about the legs more. A lot of women are I'll just train lower body, not upper body. A lot of men, I think, I'll train the upper body, the show muscles on the beach muscles, and they'll forget about the legs. And so if you add in some squats and some deadlifts, it's pretty much guaranteed you're training your legs at least harder than most people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that how hard you train your legs is really like due to exercise selection, because like I train, like the way I leg press is way harder than 99% of people squat. It's just, I think it has to do with like what kind of mindset and intentionality do you take into the exercises you've chosen, not as much of like the exercise itself. Because like even when people see me do like a bench supported cable fly, they're like, Jesus, you look like you're gonna like kill yourself on that thing. So I think it just has to do more with like a mindset and less to do with maybe the exercise itself.
So when you're programming, do you ever think like, I know that these guys are not going to push as hard on this exercise, so maybe I'll give this one, even though it's not as good, and I know they'll go harder on it, like a bench press. You know they're going to go hard on a bench press, but maybe they won't quite push another exercise, isolateral, as much.
I don't know if it's a push thing as much of an enjoyment thing. Like if I know that they're going to tend to go back and do it like progressively harder because they're chasing the number within reason of good form and good tempo, then yes, I will program. I guess still program bench press for people, even though I don't do it, because I know that there's an enjoyment level there. So I'm not naive to that, but I don't think it's due to the fact that I think they're gonna push themselves harder. I think it's just the enjoyment factor.
So would you ever give a guy a deadlift, or do you say no, it's not worth it overall?
I do, but I always do it at a deficit with like half the weight they would have normally done, so we can increase range of motion, get a lot more like glute drive, quad drive by being in a deficit. So I have a tricep push down. I specifically have an incline bench tricep push down where the cable comes behind you. So what that's gonna do is maximize stretch, maximize peak contraction, and disable you from using a lot of momentum or having to really think about, okay, what's my hip positioning? Where's my chest? Am I over it too far? Am I too upright? And it'll take rear delts out of it completely, because that vector of force is now coming from up and behind you. And then we're gonna drive through good squeeze. So basically the bench would be here. The cable's coming from up and back behind you. You grab it and then push down and squeeze. I think it's a 10 out of 10 movement for me.
Now, I didn't add any triceps exercises on the list because I wanted to include a cardio machine. But if I had to, yeah, look at my torn. I actually don't have much of a tricep left on this side. I broke my elbow and the muscle was torn off on both sides.
With the bike, right? When you were cycling?
On bike, outside riding. There's some racing mostly inside. And I did in fact include bike riding as one of my machines, because if you're racing on a bicycle, you're gonna develop your legs, your calves, your glutes. I mean, it's ridiculously hard. It's probably harder than it's harder than the rock trains, doing the bicycle leg press and stuff. Yeah, the bike is to me a great exercise. If you didn't train your lower body at all to for the guys out there, maybe I just want to train upper body. If you do some sprints, some hill sprints on a bicycle, your legs are going to grow. So just the bike on its own, I added that.
That was a curveball.
What's that?
That was a curveball for me. But
it was a curveball. There we go. If I had to add in one for triceps, I don't know. I just love this one. It's the seated dip machine.
Oh, it's so good.
That's my favorite.
Exercise.
Out of anything for triceps, more than the tricep press down machines and whatnot, there's something about it. I can just squeeze so hard, as well as I feel it's working the chest.
Yeah, really good.
That would be the one I would add if there was triceps and I was no bike. But if I was not allowed to say, hey, bike as an exercise, that's what I'd add.
All right, final, I love that, by the way. Final exercise, I have incline bench, iso dumbbell curls. So you're on an incline here, nice stretch bias, nice peak contraction, hard to ego lift in it. Really good mind muscle connection with the biceps. I didn't have quite enough back training to maybe elicit that I wouldn't have at least a singular bicep exercise. And at the end of the day, biceps are a big part of what makes a physique look good, especially since you're not shirtless all the time. So if you're wearing a dress shirt or even like a short sleeve, I think it's really important to have some nice biceps for an aesthetic physique.
And even when I've done 30-minute programs for guys and they're like, give me the exercise, and you can only do like 8. I'm doing a singular biceps exercise because it's like that's a muscle that guys want. They want the biceps, whether it's small, not a large muscle group overall. It's still something you need to see aesthetically, and I chose dumbbell curls at the same time. Then when you get tired, you can go one arm at a time.
Well, Kino Body said it's the biggest muscle group in your entire body, so it must be right.
What did Kino Body say? He said only work the triceps,
your triceps,
the biceps. The triceps are
66%
of the muscle.
He said your triceps are your biggest muscle group in your upper body.
Yeah, I think he said the triceps was. Yeah. Don't work your chest, work the triceps.
They're bigger.
But so I want biceps. So I'm definitely doing a biceps exercise. I'm not gonna just say, oh, the pull downs are gonna take care of the biceps. I want a biceps exercise of my own. If I had to pick one, it's gonna be dumbbells, because I can do so many things with these. Start with them at the same time. Maybe cheat a bit if I want. Do one arm at a time at the end.
All right, well, that is our 10. I think the most interesting thing would be 2 things. Number 1, I want you guys to go down in the comments. I want you to tell us if you'd pick Coach Greg's list or Eric's list. I'm not gonna call myself Coach Eric, I almost did, but I'm not Coach Eric. I don't think I have that level yet, but I would say go see which one. And then also, I wanna see what your guys' top 10 lists are. So go in the comments, put your top 10 lists, everybody rank or review the other ones, put likes on the ones you like. Also, last thing, I've been trying GO2 Max and Turk Builder since I've known about this partnership for the last like month or 2. They are an absolute game changer. Pre-training, I take them about 30 minutes before. I've never had better energy, better recovery. I feel stronger than ever, even on a deficit. And I know you guys are gonna say it's the gear, but honestly, these things have come in handy. Not much has changed with my PD protocol, so I'm a believer. Go to the website. I also have some amazing bundles that I've created that I use personally, and you guys get discounts by buying in the bundles. So I have a building bundle, a cutting stack. I have my favorite protein stack. So go and check it out. Make sure to support myself, Greg, the brand, so we can continue to make amazing content for you guys. And without further ado, we will see you guys on the next video.
It sound right, boy.